Welcome everyone to the Interagency Modeling and Analysis Group IMAG Multiscale Modeling webinar series. I am very happy to introduce the speakers for today. Dr. Ray Winslow is the Raj and Meera Singh Professor of Biomedical Engineering at the Johns Hopkins University School of Medicine. He is also Director of the Institute for Computational Medicine. His major area of research is integrative modeling of the cardiac myocyte to understand the molecular basis of heart disease. He is also director of the Cardiovascular Research Grid Project at an NHLBI-funded R24 resource with the goal of producing an open platform supporting integration and seamless exploration and analysis of heterogeneous cardiovascular research data using the software as a service model. And the title of today's webinar is Models as a Service. So I'm happy to turn the mic over to Ray. Welcome, Ray.
Thank you, Grace. So we've been working for a relatively short period of time, perhaps 6 months, on this notion of sharing models that we call Models as a Service. And as you heard, it's part of the Cardiovascular Research Grid Project. And there are two other folks here today who are going to do the talking. Mark Walker is a graduate student in Biomedical Engineering Department, and he's leading this effort. Mark works on many things because he's really smart and energetic and can handle many things. This is just one part of what he's doing. And so Mark's going to talk about the detailed modeling aspects of this approach. And then Ravi Maduri is on. Ravi is one of the investigators in the CVRG project. And Ravi is a well-known, world-respected expert in galaxy. And so if there are technical, deep questions about galaxy, Ravi can certainly handle them. So Mark, I'll turn it over to you.
Great, thanks, Ray. So Models as a Service. So as the title of the talk, and again, it's sort of a play on, this word is sort of a play on the buzzwords of software as a service and platform as a service that are used in, cloud-based services that are very popular because companies can, outsource these services and not have to invest in expensive infrastructure for using them. Which makes them very, economically attractive. So we have Models as a Service where basically we're trying to create a sort of centralize the delivery of these models through the web, and hopefully make it a lot easier to use computational models, easier to disseminate them, and to make the research more transparent and reproducible. So today I'm basically going to quickly introduce Galaxy in case you aren't familiar with it, which is the platform that we're going to deliver models on. I'm going to do a live demo on the web of a Galaxy server that we've got running, and show some models that we've built tools around on Galaxy to sort of show you what we've done and also to help demonstrate what Galaxy can do. And then I'll go in and I'll do a brief tutorial on how to build your own Galaxy tools. You see, it's fairly simple. And then we're going to talk about sort of going forward in the future, this new project we're working on where we want to build an online repository for CVRG where people can upload their own models that will, and the service will integrate them into Galaxy and make them available to the community. So again, I'm going to start with a brief overview of Galaxy for those of you who aren't familiar with it. It's an online web-based platform that was originated out of Penn State and was designed for, or is mostly used for genomics research, where you have large, complex, heterogeneous data sets, and it can be hard to communicate in, for example, a publication. Exactly how you did a particular analysis on some data. And Galaxy attempts to make that a lot easier. It's a so-called virtual research environment where you can go on, you can upload your data. It has a bunch of tools that are available and community-provided tools as well that allow you to do analysis in the browser, and you can then share that analysis that you do with other people very easily, and it has a lot of very nice built-in tools for doing all this. And there are three main sort of principles that Galaxy is designed around. The first is that it's designed to make the computation accessible, so it's very easy to use, user-friendly, platform independent, and it's relatively easy also, as we'll see, to create new tools for Galaxy if you have a new analysis that isn't available. It also has integrated data sources for pulling in data from genome databases. A second principle is that it ensures reproducibility, so it has, it's very easy to document exactly all the steps that you do in Galaxy. So you can comment and add tags and categorize what you've done, and you can also create these things that I'll demonstrate in the demo. That you can create these things called workflows, which are a nice visual way of representing a workflow or a pipeline where you use a bunch of tools together. The third thing it does is promote transparency, so you can, again, it has a nice sharing model where you can share what you've done with other people, and it has other nice features such as being able to reuse what other people have done in their workflows. It has these things called pages where you can provide detailed descriptions of the analyses, and it also provides, really importantly, it provides a coupling between the publication and the workspace in Galaxy, where you can actually create links, and I'll show you how to do this. You can create a link and embed that link in your publication, and say, for example, you have a figure with some results. You can embed a link, and then the user can click on the results and be taken directly into Galaxy to the exact data and the exact analysis they use. So it really is a new way to share your work. So we think that Galaxy in particular is very suitable for models as a service for a few main reasons. The first is that it's very simple. So you don't have to, in general, the way it's done now is you have to download the code. It could be in some language that maybe your personal computing, your workstation might not have. So you have to get it running on your computer, and then you have to figure out, how to use it and how to interpret the output and so on. But this makes it much easier because it's basically in a standardized. It takes the form of a tool on Galaxy where it's a standard web input, and you just have to enter in the parameters, click a button. It runs everything for you, and then you have a nice simple output that you can then analyze. It can also importantly, it can also store and execute very complex models. So what kind of model, whether it's an ODE or a PD-based or agent-based model, it can do basically any kind of model run as a program. So it's also reproducible. So again, it provides complete provenance of all the steps that you've run. And so you can see exactly what parameters were used to run the model, and if there are like post-processing steps or analysis afterwards, then you can see how that was done as well. And it also provides powerful workflow features so that you can again easily share how you used different tools together, or how if you incorporated multiple models, you can start to create sort of like super models, if you will, made out of smaller pieces and easily show how that's done. So that's just a quick introduction to what Galaxy is and why we think you should use it. And now I'm going to move into the demo portion of this, where basically I'm going to show you, just demonstrate some of the tools that we've done. So I'm going to bring up, this is the Cardiovascular Research Grid site. So CVRG is this multi-institutional effort trying to make it easier to manage, store, and analyze cardiovascular data. And there are a lot of different projects involved here. So I'm going to go ahead and go to the portal. Here we have.
I would like to.
Available. Sorry, did someone say something? Any question? Okay. So we have a number of different tools.
Yeah, this is
Yes.
I just wanted to add something else to what Mark said. In addition to using Galaxy, so Mark described some of the things that Galaxy is really good at. what we have done really successfully in the CVRG project is we have used public cloud computing capabilities such as Amazon Web Services to host the Galaxy framework as a service, so that end users and researchers can just log into the web portal and start building workflows and start using these models really easily. So one of the goals was to sort of lower the barrier to entry for researchers that would like to take advantage of advanced computational models by making it really easy for them to kind of and by making it available as a service. The goal was to lower the barrier to entry.
Thank you, Rod. Yeah, so this is our Galaxy server, which is one of the projects and is now available, so you can actually right now go on and log in and start using it. So I'll just go ahead and click on the Galaxy link, and it brings into a login page. You just need to create an account. So I'll enter my information, log in, and that brings us to the Galaxy page. So again, Robbie, feel free to jump in, but this Galaxy server has been sort of customized and built on some other technologies. One is the Globus Online project, which is headed by Ian Foster at the University of Chicago, and it is aimed at researchers who want to move large sets of data around, and it does that in a fault-tolerant way, so that you don't. One of the common problems is that you transfer a data set and an error occurs in the middle of it, and the whole thing fails. But Globus is designed to make it fail-safe so that you don't run into those kinds of issues. It's also running on Amazon EC2, the web services, so it can be scaled with demand, and you can also, as we've done, I'll show you with one of these models, you can even launch your own cluster for one of the tools if it's more computationally intensive model. So the first...
I'd like to remind everyone that if you'd like to see a bigger version of what Mark is projecting, you just double-click on the central screen and it'll make it full size on your screen. Thanks.
Thank you. So on the left bar are the tools here available on the server. Ravi has developed a number of next-generation sequencing tools, and then there's some other standard ones that can do general purpose things like text manipulation, statistics, visualization. The ones I'm going to be focusing on are these three, which are actual computational models. And we're still, the CRU3D model is one that I'll show first, and then we have two other ones that we're still, I can demonstrate, but still we're in the process of migrating them from our test server. So just bear with me on that. But the first model is one that I've been working on. We'll switch back to the presentation and just show a movie of the model that I've been working on for my thesis, which is this so-called spark model. It's called a calcium spark, which is an event that happens inside of cardiac myocytes. And you see here a video of the system. So it's a three-dimensional reaction diffusion system with stochastically gated ion channels. It's really computationally intensive. It takes roughly a day to run on a single node, and then since it's stochastic, we have to run it, hundreds or thousands of times to get a statistical average. Many thousands of hours of CPU time required. So this is a good way we think, to demonstrate that by developing a tool for this, that we can do computationally intensive models on Galaxy as well. So I'll just going to go through this three-dimensional spark model, which I just described. So we have several tools for that to run the model, set up the model, run the model, and then analyze the output. So this is what a basic Galaxy tool looks like. Basically, it's a web form, and each of these fields is a parameter. This tool is the meshing tool, so it generates the three-dimensional mesh that you run the model on. So you can specify the geometry, the placement of the ion channels, which is an important piece of this model. If you keep going down, then there's a documentation about how to run it and what the mesh usually looks like to help get the user up and running. For this presentation, I'll just use the default parameters, which work fine, and all you have to do is, to run the tool, is just hit execute. And then you notice that it says it was successful, and then on the right-hand side is our history panel. So this shows all the steps that we've run so far. So we just added a new item, which is this mesh step. And you can see it's in gray, which means that it's been queued to run. We're still working on getting this to run a little bit more quickly. But basically, what will happen is this will eventually be run, and then it will appear as green in the history panel. And once that will happen, we can continue to the next step, which is to actually run the simulation. So there are a couple things here. So the first is that the input for this is the output of the mesh step. So you select the mesh that you want to run. And then we have all the parameters for the simulation here. The nice thing about this tool is that you can select if there are different types of simulations you want to run. So this model has a few different protocols. You can just click on it, and it will update the web form with the relevant parameters, which makes it easier for the user to figure out how to use the tool. And then again, if you scroll down, this one has a few more parameters, and you get to the bottom, and then there's a description again on how to use the tool. And even though this last meshing step hasn't been run yet, we can hit execute, and it will still queue it up. So once the meshing step is complete, the next one will automatically be launched. And so in this way, you basically can build an analysis, or run the tool and build analysis afterwards if you want, and just run the tool in the browser very quickly like that. So I've already pre-run this model when we were testing it. So I'm going to go to our saved histories list, which is another feature of Galaxy. So these are all the histories that I've run in the past. So one is this CRU 3D model Spark line scan history. So this is a particular type of simulation. And I load that up, and now you notice that we have all the Galaxy items in the history panel, starting with the mesh, running the simulation, and then doing some post-processing and visualization at the end. So for each of these items, you can display the output of the mesh, which for this tool, it gives you links to each of the output files for the mesh. You can edit the attributes, you can annotate it, so you can show exactly what this step was and what you did. You can download the raw output of the data, and you can also view the parameters that were used to run this step. And you can do that for each one of these items in history. So
let me just say one thing as to how the computation is models are run in the back end. So essentially, you can select the model and select the inputs that you would want to use to run the model on. And when you click execute the model in the back end, when I say back end, I mean the computational part of the story is that there is so there's a cluster that gets set up on demand to run this analysis. So what happens is that there's a piece of code that requests a computational node from the Amazon Web Services and sets up a cluster on demand and runs the analysis. So, for example, if you're running multiple models at once, the backend code would go request all of those nodes and run them in parallel. So essentially, the goal is that by using the on-demand nature of the cloud computing capabilities, you can assemble. Sorry, was there a question?
Oh, Ravi, I was just going to ask you, maybe you don't have to hold the microphone so close to your mouth.
Okay. Is it okay? Sorry. So sorry. I don't really know how to adjust this mic so that it can adjust the voice, but
That's much better. Thank you.
But essentially, the okay. So essentially, you're sort of combining the on-demand compute capabilities with executing of models, so that the models, when they are selected to run, a compute node gets created and the model is scheduled to be run. So that's a 5-minute delay that you see when Mark submitted the model to be executed.
So we also had a question in our group chat from Ahmed. Did you want to say your question, or do you want me to?
Sure. I was wondering, it seems like you folks interfaced Galaxy with Amazon Elastic Computing. Did you have any initiatives or any attempts to interface it with high performance computing infrastructure like Exceed, where you can tap into like different computing platforms, maybe more powerful?
Yeah. So yes. So for this project, we have used Amazon EC2 to execute to run these computational models. But the framework we developed is very extensible, and we could reuse it to submit jobs to Exceed. One of the challenges in submitting jobs to Exceed is essentially to maintain the security credentials, so that the jobs that are submitted to Exceed are accounted and run under a particular Exceed grant. And Exceed is typically NSF funded researchers, but I think increasingly they're giving out allocations to NIH researchers. So we're using pretty standard schedulers and pretty standard job submission capabilities. So it's pretty. I mean, it's a little bit of work to submit the same models to the Exceed resources. Basically, you would have to populate the Exceed resources to have the computational model available. But once you have those available in Exceed, you can submit those jobs to Exceed resources also.
Herbert also had a question. Herbert, did you want to say your question now? If Herbert's mic's not working, I'll say the question he wrote on group chat. He said, "I like the idea that changes to a model are recorded and viewable later on, but can the simulation experiment be then repeated on a platform other than Galaxy?"
I guess I'll take that. So I'm not entirely sure I understand the question, but yeah. So if you say you have a model and you have the source code for that model, and there is a tool for that model on Galaxy, you can then go on to Galaxy and see exactly how the model was run in a particular instance, if that's what you're interested in. You can see all the parameters that were used. And then you would have to get the parameters. It somewhat depends on the way that the model that the tool is designed. But in this case, where you have to enter the parameters into Galaxy on the web, you basically would have to copy those parameters somehow into your version of the code that you would run locally, which I think is what they're asking.
Yeah. That's what I'm asking. One way it's really reproducible, because if I can't take it somewhere else and reproduce it, then it isn't very reproducible, is it?
Well, the idea is that you would be able to reproduce it on Galaxy itself, and so we would make as we'll talk about later, with the small repository, we'd make the source code available. It would be the same source code that's being used to run it on Galaxy. You would be able to download it to your own machine and then be able to reproduce it. Yes.
But do you know about this thing called SEDML, Simulation Description Markup Language? I mean, that's a sort of way of moving about experiments that were done on a model. Do you have any plans to use that?
To use SEDML?
SEDML.
SEDML. I'm not sure I'm familiar with that, but
it seems like some kind of an export facility is what is being looked for. It exports to something that something else can read.
Okay, well that's no. I mean, we didn't. That wasn't something that we were thinking of doing. It is an interesting idea, though. So you're saying being able to have some sort of standard that would be sort of an interface between Galaxy and then being able to reproduce this like locally, for example, on your own machine. Is that what you're saying?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, such a standard exists. So,
Okay, it's called SEDML. Is that what you said?
Simulation Experiment Description Markup Language.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. That would make it much more useful, because otherwise you're just a sort of a closed world where we can't get the reproduced simulation out of your tool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, the idea here was that this would be an entirely self-contained system where you could do everything on Galaxy. But you're right that it would be a useful thing, obviously, if you wanted to say modify the model code yourself and then run it. It would be useful to have some sort of interface between.
Well, it's more important than that. It's more important because if Galaxy goes under one day, for example, nobody will be able to reproduce any of their experiments again.
Mm-hmm.
So you need some archival method for storing all these experiments that have been done, so they can be, rerun on other platforms.
Right. So let me just answer one more. Let me just take a stab at this. So basically, what Galaxy is doing when you run this analysis is that it is creating a entry in the database saying that this tool has been executed on this version of. So essentially, a lot of this information that you need to produce an experiment is stored in the database in the backend. So if Galaxy goes down, or if there's no more development in Galaxy, the database still has all the information that you would need to kind of reproduce a workflow or rerun it.
Yeah, I don't think you can expect a biologist to learn SQL and extract all the data from the database. I think you need some export facility, probably.
You want something that's more automated than just being able to
export. I mean, you don't expect somebody to troll through a database.
Well, this is an example. This page right here that I have up shows all the parameters that we use to run this particular workflow. And so, I mean, you're right that you wouldn't have to go through the database.
So can that be exported?
Ravi, are you aware of a way that it could be exported?
Right now, no. Right now, there's the only way is in the form of a database. But as Herbert rightly pointed out, it's not really not very end user friendly. If you may, it's still a database that you have to load up and see.
Yeah, so this is something you could add then at some point later on.
Mm-hmm. I'll make a note of this. We can talk about it.
Okay, so we have about 2 more questions lined up. I don't know if you want to continue with questions to continue with your presentation.
Well, I have until 1 o'clock, right? So I guess I could take a couple more and then.
Okay. So Les, was your question answered, Les, or do you want to say something more about your question?
Yeah, I guess I was just having a little trouble conceptualizing how a generic model would be uploaded into this interface. Would it have to? Does it presuppose that it's in CellML format? That it's a CellML, or how would you?
That's a good question. I'm actually going to get more into this later in the talk, so I think it will probably be answered later, be made more clear.
Okay.
Okay, and Jacob, did you want to pose your question now?
It's just a comment. If they are using Amazon EC2, then basically someone was asking if you can reproduce it otherwise. If they provide the machine image that they are actually running on Amazon a minute before they actually run it, then someone can actually take this image and basically run it again. So it's just a simple matter of exposing it. I don't know if they do it now or not, but it should be fairly simple. But they have to make a snapshot before they run or after they run, or at some point it's basically irreproducible. But it's doable and quite easy.
Thank you. Yeah, that would be a good way to do it. Just be to make the image available. I don't, Ravi, if that's probably something you could do fairly easily.
Yeah, so we do snapshot the tools volume and also the so in the Amazon speak. So to some extent, the Amazon machine image is versioned. So we do have the version of the machine image. But what we don't do right now is snapshot a execution of model before and after the execution to some extent. That, you know, you would have a snapshot before and you would have a snapshot of the after because it's I think yeah, that's something we need to explore a little bit more to understand how it works.
Okay. All right, so we'll just try to fly through the rest of the demo here. Basically, so I've shown you, so we've each one of these steps has various metadata associated with it, so it's all very easy to see what was done. And then we have various outputs. So, example, here we have another tool for generating what's called a line scan. Here's like a blown up low resolution image of a line scan, which is basically something that's experimentally observed and is of interest to people using this model, and it's rather complex to generate, so we have a tool available for doing this. They can download then the high-resolution format of this and do their own analysis on it. We also have, there are nice plotting features built into Galaxy, so we can plot the output online. Furthermore, there are ways to actually share these histories via hyperlink. And so we recently submitted a manuscript, and just as an example of what you could do is here we have a figure 2 of our manuscript where we have these graphs that sort of are of interest to people who study calcium sparks. And here we have the line scan that I just showed. And so what you can do is just embed into the manuscript, say in the figure legend, just say we have an example spark available online, and they just have to click on it. And then it brings up Galaxy, and right here they can immediately see all the results from an example spark. And again, they have all the same data available to them. They can view it. They can view the output and see exactly how everything was done and download the data. So it's a nice way to couple workspaces between the publication workspace and Galaxy. Okay. So another thing that can be done is a workflow that I mentioned in the introduction. So here we'll just go up to the menu and hit Extract Workflow. And basically what a workflow is it's, if you think of, so this is our history, and this is a series of steps that we've actually have run. And a workflow is more like a template for a history and shows you how a history could be generated and sort of, not something that was actually run, but shows you how you can use tools together. And so here I've now exported this history, and I'm going to hit Edit, and we'll bring up the workflow editor. And so it's this nice nodal diagram where we have these windows that are, each one of these is a tool, and you can click on it, and you can change all the parameters here. And basically, you have tools connecting the output, in this case, the output of the mesh file to the input of the run model tool. And then you can see that there's some other post-processing that we do. And so, maybe looking at this in history, it was a bunch of steps. It wouldn't be really clear what was done. You can always export it to the workflow and get a better idea of how it was done. And you can also create these workflows from scratch. And similarly, you can also share these via hyperlink and share them on this Galaxy server so that other people can view them. And then let's say you had this workflow and then you wanted to run it. All you need to do is go and hit the run button, and then it'll show you all the steps. You can review all the parameters, and you hit run workflow, and it'll automatically set up the Amazon server and run everything for you all at one fell swoop. So it's a very nice, easy way to another feature that makes it nice for sharing models. So I think I'm going to go ahead and move on to the other two models that we worked on. One is an ODE-based wholesale model. There are many parameters for this one, and this is the way that we did it was basically you have one field for each parameter. These are all initial conditions and physical constants, and then again some documentation at the bottom of the tool to show how to use the model. And from this you're able to, I think in the interest of time I'll skip it, but you can reproduce some figures from the original publication on Galaxy. Another tool that I think will be interesting to a lot of you is this CellML tool. So basically what you can do here is you can upload a CellML file, you select the model, and then you can, in this tool you can edit initial conditions and parameter values, so you just have to enter the component name of the variable, the name of the variable, and the new variable value, and you can add as many parameters as you want. So this provides a way to, it might be useful to edit a CellML, some simple things, just the parameter values in a CellML file. And then we have another tool, which is an actual simulation tool using a piece of software from the CellML site called the CellML Simulator by David Nickerson. And basically you can upload the model, you specify some solver options, and then you can add output variables. You just specify again the component and the name of the variable, and it'll run you hit execute and it'll compile the model, solve it, and provide an output file with the specified output variable. So in principle you can, here we've shown that basically you can use Galaxy to not only simulate CellML models, but also potentially as a repository for CellML models, because again you can share all the history and all the data. So I think it's a nice interactive way to use CellML. So that was the first part of the talk where I wanted to sort of go through. I want to make sure I'm sharing the right window here. So can you see the presentation?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, thanks. So the next part of the presentation I want to talk about is how to basically build a Galaxy tool. So I'm just, there are lots of ways to go about it, but I'm going to just show a very simple way to do it. So what you basically need, one component is you need the model program, which should basically be something that you can run from the command line. So it could be compiled C++ code, it could be Java, it could be Python, it could be a MATLAB script. Basically something where you can go into the command line and run the model, then you should be able to invoke it using Galaxy. The other piece is sort of Galaxy specific, and that's an XML tool configuration file. And I'm going to show an example of one so you kind of get an idea of what it looks like, but there's a lot more information at this link here on the Galaxy wiki on how to build that configuration file. So for this simple example that I'm going to show, it's basically we'll have a single input file which contains all the parameter values of the model. The model program then takes in the location, the path of that input file, and the path of the output file as command line arguments. And the output and input files will be somewhere in the Galaxy database. We don't know where beforehand, but Galaxy will take care of that for us. So basically what we're building is this simple tool, we'll call it my tool. And so we have this single input file which we've uploaded to Galaxy. And so it's basically just select the input file and hit execute to run the tool. So this is really a very simple bare bones example of how to get a model running on Galaxy. And this is the XML. It's 11 lines. And so basically you have the first tag as a tool, and you give it a name and a unique ID. The second tag is the command tag, and that's how you tell Galaxy how to run the model. So in this case, we're using the bash interpreter, so this is a shell command, and you just give it the path to the model script or executable. And then it takes in two two arguments. One is the $sign input file and $sign output file. And so those are Galaxy variables. And they correspond to, if you go a few lines down, so there's an input tag and then a parameter tag inside of that, and that's name is input file. So that corresponds with the first argument of the command line command, input file, and that's a data type with it's tabular, so it's tab delimited, and we'll call it input file. And then similarly for the output file, we have a tag under output, so the data type, which is called output.txt. And so basically, in this case, when Galaxy runs the model, it will run the command, the path to the model. It'll then paste in the input file path for the first argument, and then the output file path for the second argument. So you just need to design your model to expect those arguments, and basically that's the basic way in which you can integrate the model into Galaxy. You also saw that in our tools we were using parameter fields. We can actually enter the parameters into the browser itself. So in this case, we want to add two parameters, parameter 1 and parameter 2. All you need to do is add a couple of lines. So you would need to add two more parameter tags to the inputs. In this case, we're calling them param1 and param2, a floating type and an integer type. And then you would also have your model then expect those inputs, param1 and param2, as additional arguments. So this is the basic way in which you can quickly create a Galaxy tool. There are ways to add more flexibility to the way that you call the model. For example, it's common to have a Python wrapper script around it, so that which is useful for various things. For example, if you wanted to have different input fields and then have it compile those parameters into a file for your model beforehand, or if you wanted to do maybe validation on the input or some kind of post-processing, then this might be a useful way to do it. And so basically you just would have to create the wrapper script and then have Galaxy call that wrapper script and then give it, of course, all the parameters so that the Python script then knows how to call the model program. And this is the way that it's done in the tools that I've shown. Another thing is if your model has multiple outputs, you just need to add specify the output directory. Galaxy provides a way to do that, and you just use this extra files path variable property, and then you can just write all of your output files to a single directory. Say if you have 100 output files, that might not work so well in Galaxy because each one would appear as a history item, so you would kind of flood your history. So this might be a better way to design it. So these are just some other ways to go about it if you have more complex models or more special. So you need to do something. You need a little more flexibility in building the tool. But that's basically all I wanted to show how to get you quickly up and running and sort of get an idea of how these tools work. So there are, again, some tool design questions. So you have input files, there's parameter fields, what output file formats. It's important to think about error handling when you're doing. You want to make sure that if there's an error, that it's caught within your model program and sent back to Galaxy. And I'm not going to go too much into that, but these are some important things to think about when you're designing a tool, and of course trying to keep your tool consistent with the publication so it's easy for people to use. So the last part of the talk, we don't have too much time left. I'll quickly go through is this computational model repository, which we're just getting started on the actual development of it. That we've been designing for quite some time. And basically what we want to do is create like a catalog for computational models where people can go in and upload their code, have it automatically be integrated into Galaxy, and then make this tool available basically to anyone who wants to use it. And so you basically be able to search for models, and you can download the source, you can download the tool code, you can download the, so if you had your own Galaxy server, you could then put it on your own Galaxy server. And of course be able to run the Galaxy tool as this would act as sort of a portal into Galaxy. So an important part of this will be, importantly, there's a nice there's a nice part of the Galaxy project called the tool shed, and the best way I think I've heard it described is it's sort of like the app store for Galaxy, and users can basically upload a new tool, and then it undergoes a review process by administrators and other users in the community. And if it gets approved, then it can be then installed to production Galaxy servers, and it can also be shared with other Galaxy servers so other people can access it easily. And it has a number of nice features that we'd be interested in for the model repository, like version control, automatic validation to make sure that the tool works correctly, dependency management if there are third-party packages or software that it depends on. Those can be specified in these repositories, and it also has an API which will allow us to access the tool shed from our portal, which is important. And as a proof of concept of being able to integrate, so if someone uploads a model, we want it to be as automatically as possible integrated into Galaxy. And as a proof of principle, we created a tool where you can actually basically enter in the name of the model, its executable name, then provide a source code link, and basically generates a Galaxy tool for you, very similar to the Barebones example I showed earlier. And so basically, in principle, what we're showing is that you can generate tools with another tool, and that automatically integrating models into Galaxy is something that can be done without too much effort. This slide I'll quickly go through is just sort of showing how we sort of envision this process working, where a user we wanted to make it as easy as possible for both the user as well as administrators to make it low maintenance. So we think we want the user will submit the model. It'll automatically the repository will generate a tool for it. It could then be moved on to the testing tool shed and the Galaxy server. If there are third-party dependencies, those may need to be installed. And then the model will undergo some kind of validation process by the administrators and by other users to make sure that it behaves correctly, that it's safe code, and that it's easy to use. And if we have problems with that, we may need to go back and rework the submission a little bit. But otherwise, we can then move it to production tool shed and Galaxy server and make it available for use. So there are a few issues with a few challenges that we may face. One is that each tool would need to be reviewed by the administrators and by the community, and we think that this could be a bottleneck for having a large number of tools on this service. There's also the issue of having third-party dependencies and compatibility issues with using other libraries, different operating systems, different languages, and we think that maybe if we provide some guidelines and a standard list or standard set of supported libraries, operating systems, and languages, that this can be made, this issue can be minimized. And then finally, probably the easiest one to address is how to allocate computing resources, but we're working on chargeback so that users will be charged basically based on their usage of computing time and storage. So just to sum up what I've shown, basically I quickly introduced Galaxy and then showed how we've been using it. We've demonstrated that it can be used to deliver models, and we've used some various models of different complexity to show how that can be done. I quickly went through a tutorial on how to create your own tools, so that should be enough to get you up and running with something simple. And then finally, I went through this computational model repository idea, which is still very much a work in progress, and we're very open to more comments if you have suggestions or concerns or any ideas on how to make it better or issues that we might run into. We're more than open to discussing those. So thanks again for listening. I'd like to acknowledge our colleagues at University of Chicago, Ian Foster, head of the getting a lot of the code running on the CVRG Galaxy server, and then Stephen Granite here, who has been helping with designing the model repository. So yeah, I'd be happy to take any questions or happy to hear feedback if you have any about this project. Thanks.
Great. Thank you so much, Mark and Ray and Ravi. We have a set of questions lined up, and please unmute your mics and your cameras so we can have a good discussion going. So going in order, Jacob, did you want to start with your workflow question?
Yeah, I have two questions. I'll ask them together. First of all, the workflow is a very powerful feature. I wish it was there about 10 years ago. Now, the question is, once you do a workflow, I saw you have things that are running in parallel. This is quite typical when you have to analyze a lot of results. Do you go and you actually run those in parallel? Like if you have cluster capabilities, did you actually take all those processes and launch them in parallel to reduce the time of post-processing?
Ravi, you know if you might be able to answer that better than me.
Yeah. So the workflow, once you describe it, it will take care of all the parallelism. So each if the steps in the workflow can be run in parallel without having to, if there's no data dependencies on the steps, they will automatically be run in parallel. So for models that require sort of a MPI or a different type of parallelism, that is dealt at the tool level. When you set up a cluster and when you're running these analysis codes, an API cluster gets set up dynamically, and then the analysis is run on the cluster. So there are various types of parallelism that we have explored in this work. One is at the tool level, the one is at the the workflow level parallel, and another one is at a task level, where you could think of tools like Swift or API that you could use to run these tools at a higher performance.
So just to clarify, the minute you draw the workflow, the system will by itself figure out what's running in parallel and allocate the resources for it, or does the user have to actually specify each one of those themselves? Let's say I want each box to have a machine of its own. Is it something that the user specifies, or is it something that is figured out by the system?
It's a very good question. So when the work drawn and the user clicks execute, each of the boxes gets automatically run on a compute node of its own. But when you create so the user does not have to specify any of these details. The tool developer can optionally specify that this tool requires so and so compute resources. The algorithm in the backend will go figure out what type of compute node is required to run this algorithm at scale, and uses that compute node automatically. So the user does not have to specify these resource descriptions and the parallelism. The framework and the tool developer will automatically figure those things out.
This is Ray. Could I just add a final comment on that? When Mark was showing the calcium release unit simulation, you saw that in one of the input screens he specified that he wanted to use 4 different machines on Amazon, and he wanted to run, I guess it was 250 simulations on each of those 4 nodes. Now these particular simulations are embarrassingly parallel, but the computation can be specified by the user to be executed on any given configuration that can be spun up in Amazon EC2. And the dependencies that Mark and Ravi were mentioning, an example is, while we could launch the mesh generation program to execute and run in the background, and then launch the simulation program to execute, simulation program is dependent on the mesh, and so they're both queued up, and parallelism will be employed once the dependency on the mesh has been resolved.
That's correct. Yep.
Ahmed, do you want to go ahead with your question?
Sure. I was just wondering if Galaxy has the capacity to aggregate simulation results of the same model, but from different users, like submitting the same model with different input parameters, for example. In a sense, to do crowdsourced sensitivity analysis. Because one user may be interested in a certain parameter set, the other user might be interested in a certain parameter set, but when all those can be combined together, the results can get a more elaborate sensitivity analysis of the model.
That's another very good question. So right now, the abstraction at which the user results are displayed is in the form of a history, which is the history of all the steps along with the data sets that the user has generated. So you could, I mean, unless the user, the runner of these tools makes a decision to share these results with everybody in the world, they could. I mean, that process has to be explicitly set so that once a simulation has run, the user can choose to publish its results to be world readable, and we could also sort of make it to some extent. We could do some metadata discovery in the back end to extract all the simulation runs that are using the same model and publish them in a data repository. It's a very good good observation, but we don't have that capability right now.
Jacob, you want to go ahead with your question on variations of models?
Yeah, so some models have variations, and also sometimes the results have the multiple versions. You actually said that one of your simulations you have to run 250 instances of. So do you have something automatic in the system to version it all somehow, or any way to help the user other than the user specifying it on its own, all those versions and variations?
I think that. So are you asking, just to clarify, are you asking different versions of the model, or different versions, like different parameter sets?
Both. And results, like stochastic Monte Carlo variations.
So for different versions of the models, it does support that with the Galaxy toolshed. It supports versioning of all the tools and all their associated models. So yeah, so those can be reproduced. So if you're viewing results from version 1.0, those can be rerun later because the version still exists on the system. And then if you in version 2.0, you can still run the model and revert back to version 1.0 if you need to rerun. I believe that's, correct me if I'm wrong, Robbie, but I think that's the way it works. And then for running different versions, different parameter sets, that's also easy to do. It's easy to rerun a particular analysis because there's actually a button that says rerun the tool with a new set of parameters, and then again you could either document that this is a new parameter set, or the user would be able to go in and see that how the parameter sets differ. Does that answer your question?
Yep, it's good. It's, the way you describe it, it's beautiful.
Are there any other questions from the audience?
This is Jim Bassingthwaite. I have a question on verification procedures. What does Galaxy have in order to go through the various tests that one needs for verification of the model accuracy? Do you have such things as unit balance checking?
No, so you don't have anything quite that detailed. The way that it would work, I think, is the user would give, for example, the input parameters or input file for the tool for validation, and then a corresponding set of output files that are expected if the tool is working correctly. And Galaxy has features built in that will automatically validate, I think, on a nightly basis to make sure that the tool runs correctly.
How do you tell if the tool runs correctly? For example, your meshes are complex. The ODEs are relatively simple, and there are a variety of ways of checking those. But unit balance checking is the simplest thing and preliminary to everything else.
Yeah, you're right. So it does rely on, it relies on the user who provides the tool to provide valid input and correct output sets as they're expected. I guess you're question in positing that it doesn't show that the model, that, numerical accuracy or there are no bugs in the code that those don't exist. You're supposing that the user has worked that out and is using a version of the model that works correctly.
So this is Ray. Could I step in and comment on what Jim has asked? So we view Galaxy as being a portal for doing simulations. And so if the community or users have tools for doing the kind of checking that you referred to, Jim, they can be executed in Galaxy. If the community or if users want to validate data, to me validate means that a model is documented with a certain set of inputs and parameters to generate a certain set of experimental data. All of that information is maintained within Galaxy, and in fact it's the purpose of using those capabilities to generate the ability to link out from Galaxy simulations and data sets to figures in paper. And so I see the validation problem as being no different than it is with any other simulation approach, with the exception that Galaxy provides, I think, an easy way of getting at models, inputs, output data to do validations.
Ray, I was trying to distinguish the verification process, the numerical accuracy, from the validation process, namely testing the validity of the model against real-life data. And that latter process was not part of my original question, but now is. How do you do all the optimizations and the sensitivity analysis, the confidence limits on the parameters, and that kind of stuff?
We don't. That's, as I said, Galaxy, we view it as being a general purpose tool for running computations. And so if there are tools for doing the things you said, which of course there are, they can be deployed in Galaxy and integrated into workflows. So that's how it's done. We aren't going to build, we don't need to build in these specific capabilities other than possibly by creating workflows that do simulations and feed those results into any kind of sensitivity analysis tools that are out there.
Okay, so we could possibly run Galaxy, create a solution to the model, and then test the fitting of that model against data by bringing it back into our own system. Would that be a mechanism?
Well, you can do it within Galaxy. Galaxy stores data, models, analysis tools. You can combine them into workflows, so you can do that in Galaxy. Or you can do what you just said. Now, Galaxy has the capability of doing what you just said. It requires development of those capabilities or implementation of those capabilities within Galaxy. But everything you said can be done.
So that would have to be written into the code for the model solution then, by using Galaxy.
Well, Can we talk more specifically? Is it useful for you to pose a workflow that you're interested in, and then talk about how that could be done in Galaxy?
Well, if we're doing a normal optimization procedure to adjust parameters to fit data, can that be done within Galaxy in your current configuration, or does one have to supply the optimization routines?
haven't thought about this before, but off the top of my head, when we do this, this could possibly be done through the workflow composition capabilities of Galaxy. So it may be possible to build a workflow that involves a model simulation given a set of parameters. And then another component in the workflow is a minimization algorithm that operates on the parameters of interest. And that this process is controlled iteratively. If you want to select different initial parameter sets from which to begin minimization processes. So I think one might be able to contain minimization algorithms within Galaxy, models within Galaxy, and then compose them together as workflows to do data fit, model fitting to data that you've described.
Okay, that sounds like something we could explore.
Yeah.
All right, well, we have two more questions, Les, and follow up with Herbert on Les's question. I don't know how long you guys want to continue, but this is clearly a lot of people are interested. So go ahead, Les.
Okay, I mean, it's Herbert's question is really just pretty much the same one as mine. You know, I was just wondering how much effort it takes to get a model software tool installed in Galaxy and make it general enough so that all of the capabilities within the tool, and all of the user interface within the tool, as Herbert said, are really accessible to a user through the Galaxy interface.
So, Mark, if I could just start off. So you showed the calcium release unit 3D model as an example where there was an exhaustive set of parameters that could be modified via the Galaxy user interface. So that's one approach. Another approach is for users to specify parameters that may be changed in an input file. And then these different input files are selected within Galaxy, eliminating the need to do this through a user interface. So I think in your answer you should make these different approaches clear and talk about the strengths and weaknesses of each of these different approaches. Okay.
Yeah, so, I mean, there are different ways of going about building a tool, and certainly you put more effort to make it more user-friendly, or if you design a way that might be easier for the user to use, it would be more time-consuming. I think that as you definitely gain experience with building tools in Galaxy, it becomes a lot easier. There's a little bit of a learning curve, but as you get experience, it becomes easier. And so again, as Ray said, there are different approaches to how you want to design the tool interface. So in a lot of in the demo I showed, for example, in the cell model, there were over 100 parameters, and they were all individual fields in the tool. And that was, I mean, that took me an afternoon to write, just because it was a tedious number of parameters to edit in. It wasn't difficult; it was just a little bit time-consuming. There are easier ways, like in the simple example I showed, where you have a single input file and you have a single output file in the model, and that can be done with 11 lines of XML code, and so very minimal effort, but it doesn't provide much interactivity in the browser in terms of being able to change the parameters. You would have to download the parameter file to your computer, change the parameters if you wanted to, and then re-upload it, which isn't really the way you usually do things in Galaxy. But it's it's a totally valid way to do it, and it still provides Galaxy will have those parameter files, so people will still be able to see exactly what you did and how you did it, but it just isn't quite as elegant, I guess. So basically, the short answer is I don't think that developing tools in most cases is too difficult. You may need to do some modifications to your model program. For example, I showed in that case the model would have to expect an input file, an input text file. It would have to parse the text file for the parameters and then generate an output file in some format. But beyond that, it's in writing the XML code, it's not much effort to install a tool onto the to develop a tool, and then it's really not much effort either to actually get it running on the server. So
this is Ray. I think the two of you are asking one of the most important questions that we face right now. So in my view, there are two big challenges that any useful web service faces. The first is that in running a web service, you can't impose a huge amount of labor on the backs of the administrators who are running the service. If there's a lot they have to do, the service won't scale. So you have to push back some of the problems back onto the user. But then it creates the problem that the more of an energy barrier there is to the user, the less the service will be used. So it's really hard, I think, working out this balance between what do administrators do and what do the users do. So I think there are two kinds of users. There are people who want to use this resource in the way that we've been primarily thinking of it, which is an experimentalist reads a paper on modeling that is very focused on interpreting complex experimental data. And they would like to run this model. Perhaps they've got some parameters that they want to vary. And so with the approach that we first showed you, it's very easy to do this. They go to the site, they can change things around. Maybe it's the number of calcium channels relative to the number of calcium release channels in the cardiac diet. So they can do that, and they can run the simulations and document them and get results. And we think that's pretty easy, given that as the producers of the model, we've put it out there in a way that is easy for everyone to use. Then there's the expert user and how they think about using this infrastructure. And so here's the way I think we will use the infrastructure in our model building process. I see Galaxy as being a great way of just documenting what you do day to day. So you can go back and know precisely what you did. You haven't lost the outputs, the inputs, the models. They're there documented as part of Galaxy. In that mode, you can install your own Galaxy server. That Galaxy server can utilize whatever computational resources you have. If you've written parallelized code that uses MPI, then Galaxy could care less. It'll run the codes on whatever parallel computing resources you have using MPI. It's just a matter of bringing your simulation code into Galaxy. So I think the expert user might be less put off by the labor of developing a very explicit interface like Mark has done. But certainly the experimentalist, the casual, the person who simply wants to use your model, they couldn't possibly, I don't think, generate the kind of user interface that Mark showed you with hundreds of parameters and initial conditions that could be set. And so the model producer needs to do that for them within the Galaxy interface.
Okay, Jacob, do you want to go ahead with your load monitoring question?
Yeah, so you have a test mechanism that you showed, which is very, very good. But once you go on the cloud, all sorts of things go sometimes not as expected, especially since there are all sorts of communication going on, sometimes disk capacity matters, sometimes CPU matters, sometimes you have to somehow control the load of what's going on there. Now, if you provide the interface, then the person who's running probably does not own the machines and cannot use the Amazon tools to do that. Do you provide alternative load balancing tools or load monitoring tools to see what's going on, to see whether the simulation progressing as it should be?
I think there are quite a few questions in that one question. I'm trying to figure out which one to answer first. Um, I think so. One of the things that you've asked is that while the simulation is running, while the code is actually running on multiple machines, is there a way to monitor, see how the progress that has been made for during the simulation itself? So right now, the way the monitoring information the user gets is uh, if it's an MPI job, and if the MPI job is outputting some status information to the standard out, then the user can see that standard out information in Galaxy interface. So that could be saying that, out of 128 MPI tasks you submitted, 100 of them are done. So something like that. And the additional monitoring information is provided by Amazon itself, which says, so we do run monitoring service on the Galaxy service, which provides the total number of jobs that are being run by users and the amount of disk space that they're using. So these are all services that we run on top of Amazon services, so that we get this monitoring information. But right now, that information is only available for an administrator of Galaxy instance, not for the users. And there's also a throttling feature that we haven't employed yet, which essentially limits the number of runs a user can run depending on their quota. So you can enforce the quota, and depending on the user's quota, you can enforce some sort of a throttling. And lastly, I think we also implemented a chargeback model, which means that if you have an Amazon Web Services account, we could use that account to run your compute analysis, so that you got it. Okay, yeah. So great. Thank you.
Okay, Herbert, do you want to go with your question?
Yeah, I guess this is a simple one. So at the moment, the way you wrap tool is through XML. What happens if my tool is a library itself? Is there any way to wrap that, or should I provide, say, a Python wrapping for it, and then you can use your XML spec to wrap that up? Do you hear me?
Sorry, yeah, I just had could you just repeat it one more time?
Yeah, let's say I have a library, a library with a C API. I'd like it hosted on your platform for other people to run simulations. Is there any way to wrap up the C API using your XML format, or should I, say, produce a Python interface to my library, and then Galaxy can access it that way? Sorry?
Sorry, go ahead.
So let me just take it. So if your library is used for others, model creators to use it at the API level to create their own model, then we would have to just install your library as a system library, and make it available as under the LD library path. So when we launch the Galaxy instance, if your dynamic libraries are linked already, then somebody who has added a code or a model that uses your dynamic library or your library and links it at runtime, it is available in the system environment to be used. So yeah, so we can do that today.
Okay, great. Okay, thanks.
Let me add one more thing here, and after Herb's question, because that brings us back to the nice pushback that Ray described between the user and the administrators of the service. There's also a pushback towards the developers of the third-party tools that you are integrating, because you will need to sometimes ask the third-party tool to give you the hooks, like you were talking to Herb, how to integrate if you just have a C API and not an input file, or a command line parameter available. and then to maintain that as the third-party tool evolves. Say, okay, a certain parameter or function was not exposed in version 2.1, but is exposed in version 2.2. And we see this with BAM and SAM and all these that, if you're going to use Bowtie, you always have to update Bowtie 2 to the latest in order to get the Galaxy and the whole NGS workflow to take advantage of the latest features. So how have you thought about the interaction with the community of other potential third-party simulation tools except the ones that are your own that you are presenting right now?
Right. So that's a very good question. So I mean that the hope or the goal was to create a community, just like NGS tools have a community that develop these tools and make them available in the Galaxy Toolshed repository. If the community to some extent requires the Galaxy service to be updated to the latest and greatest model, and to some extent it's sort of a community-driven effort to prioritize and to kind of tell us the service operators to determine which models need to be updated and what versions need to be created. So if you look at the Galaxy Toolshed, it has capabilities for users to record their experiences, to kind of give it 4 stars, just like you would when you buy things at Amazon, you would rate the service or the product. You can do the same thing in the Galaxy Toolshed, and depending on the rating and the user's feedback, the service operators could use that as an input to prioritize the versions and the tools that need to be available in the Galaxy service itself.
So we've been focusing on really beginning questions on what are Galaxy's capabilities, how can we leverage them. So we haven't done a lot with other people's tools yet. Now, you didn't see a demo of this because it's on our own local Galaxy instance, but Mark did give a high-level view of what we have been doing with CellML. And so Galaxy can store CellML files. We can deploy a CellML simulator in Galaxy and run simulations using the XML files as inputs, and Galaxy then provides the documentation on these simulations. It's an example of plugging community tools into Galaxy, so it's not like we haven't done that yet, but there's some very fundamental questions that we just need to understand about what are all the things that we could do with Galaxy.
Yeah, can I add there? Yeah, that's the kind of thing I'm interested in, actually, what you did there with CellML. And the one thing that's missing, I guess, is the UI experience and how that's going to evolve with you over time. I know it's a difficult one to solve. So if you could have richer UIs on Galaxy, I think that would add a lot to Galaxy.
Yeah, we think a lot about this in our other web service applications, and it's crucially important. It's part of the reducing the barrier to users, and I think we can do a lot more to simplify our interfaces and make them intuitive. You want them to be like Amazon Web Services, and you just go there and you do things simply. That's the ideal, but it's easy to say that, and it's hard to get there.
Sure. So what about interactive computing? If you're pushing all the simulations onto the cloud, you may have the opportunity to allow users to do interactive computing rather than just set numbers, collect data.
Can you say more about interactive computing? What you actually
sliders. All your parameters you enter in little boxes, but what if you had a slider where you could move it back and forth?
Yeah.
To a change.
Oh, I see what you mean.
Yeah,
a user interface that allows you to manipulate inputs in ways other than just entering text. Is that what you mean?
Yeah. I mean, at the moment, you've got a batch mode operation.
Yeah.
A more interactive operation.
Yeah, we do actually. So to some extent, the interactiveness is available in the exploring the results of the analysis. So you could create interactive plots, and you could understand the data, the results a bit more. But you're kind of absolutely right. But if the tool has if there's a way to sort of create if a builder of a model can contribute a tool that has more interactive nature of submitting jobs, then that could be integrated. But we don't have any examples of that, but I can see how it could be done.
What happens if we have JavaScript code that provides a browser experience? Could that be integrated into Galaxy?
Definitely.
Okay.
Definitely. That's exactly what we have been doing in another project also. So it just uses a JavaScript Angular or Backbone to sort of create a more intuitive or dynamic user interface, and uses that to submit to kind of it uses as a translator to convert users' input to something that Galaxy can understand in the backend.
Well, that's how you could get some better UIs then, if users contributed their UIs in terms of HTML, JavaScript code. So.
Yeah, yeah.
All right. Well, we have something like that, so to contribute.
Okay. Well, I hope most people have gotten their questions answered. It's clearly a presentation that transcends a lot of our discussions in the Multiscale Modeling Consortium. So I'd like to thank Ray and Mark and Ravi for their presentation, and congratulations on this platform that you've developed. So let's give a virtual applause to the speakers. Thank you very much. And I'd like to remind everyone to make sure you register for the annual Multiscale Modeling Consortium meeting happening September 3rd through the 4th, and actually Herbert and Maciek are hosting a satellite symposium on the 5th that is open for discussions just like this. So I would encourage you all to come and continue this discussion.
Thanks, everyone.
Everyone, take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.